Assalamu alaikum. Today we're joined by Sheikh Faiyaz. Sheikh Faiyaz and I will be discussing the topic of the importance of community. Thank you again for joining us today, Sheikh Faiyaz. Sheikh Faiyaz is the Associate Chaplain and Research Scholar at Islamic Center at New York University. He also has his own podcast, Shaking It Up with the Sheikh Faiyaz, very active on Instagram, also an important part of the New York community, New Jersey community, and all across the Northeast, really. Sheikh Faiyaz, again, thank you for joining us and taking on this topic today.
No, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me again.
Absolutely. So let's dive right into it. The first question I have for you is kind of emphasize and put into perspective for us how important community is in Islam.
You take a look at verse of the Quran and traditions of the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. There's a really strong emphasis on community and the need to really utilize community as a means to sort of allow for our personal and spiritual growth. So, sorry, my kids are screaming in the back. I don't know if you can hear them. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we're all at home during the course of these days due to the COVID pandemic and so on. And all of this sort of really puts into perspective again how important community is, because we are in the month of Ramadan. We're fasting. We're used to breaking our fast with other people, praying with others, so on. You take a look at, where this idea came from historically. You take a look at the time of the Prophet ﷺ and this emphasis on congregational prayers, emphasis on breaking fast with one another. Hajj, you have to perform it on specific days, right? And it's really, really powerful. If you've been for Hajj before, one of the first thoughts that you might, think about is, man, if I was able to perform Hajj by myself without all these people, it'd be a much more spiritual experience. But God says, no, you have to do it with people. Doing things with people in a way that allows for us to get closer toward God is there something super important in that tradition from the Prophet. He states, Amarani Rabbi bimudaratin nas kama amarani Rabbi bifara'ad as-salawat. Something like this, the hadith goes, where he states that God commanded me to community organizing virtually in the same way that he commanded me to the obligatory 5 daily prayers, right? So being with one another, spending time with one another, building with one another, growing, worshiping, so on and so forth, is integral within Islamic tradition.
And how does that, the reason for the emphasis on community, what does that do for an individual?
At the very least, it allows for someone to have a social circle whereby we emphasize the same values as those who you pray with, those that you fast with, those that you break fast with, those that you perform the pilgrimage with. This world is really, really diverse. You take a look at the East and the West, and within our own cities, within our own communities, sometimes you want to be with people who share those same values, and nothing is as important as your religious values. At the end of the day, we're on this path towards seeking perfection and proximity to our Creator. And when you're able to sort of tread on that path with other people who know the ups and downs and the struggles that go along with seeking toward knowing God, right? It just makes it a lot more comforting that you're with others. And community within Islamic law as well has a really strong emphasis. So it's not only a recommendation that you break fast with others, but for instance, the Friday prayer within Ja'fari fiqh, for instance, you need a minimum of 5 people, right? You have to have a congregational prayer to perform the Jum'ah prayer. When someone passes away, when someone dies, it becomes an obligation on the entire community, to perform that individual's burial rituals. Man, woman, old, young, doesn't matter, right? And of course, if one does it, then the obligation, falls on behalf of the others. But it becomes a communal responsibility to bury someone, right? To care for their family afterwards. For instance, within tradition, someone who passes away, for 3 days, their family should not have to cook. That means it becomes a communal responsibility to go. Of course, it's a recommendation, not something an obligation, but nonetheless, it's practice and it's something beautiful and it's something very emphasized. People will go and bring food probably for weeks to the family member of someone who's deceased, right? All, again, community creates friendship, community creates bonding, community is something where you can lean on. And this is what we learn from the prophetic tradition and the prophetic practice of our messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
That's amazing. And I think as we talk about like why communities are important and putting that in perspective, we also want to emphasize what community is. It's not just about like you and I, because we look the same, we're going to be in a community.
No.
It's mostly about our beliefs and our values as well. It's not just, people that look alike, that go to the same mosque. It's also people that have the same values as me, as you mentioned earlier, people that have the same beliefs as me. And that, I think that's the most important part of it.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Yeah, and that's why I emphasize that, what a community is about. If you fall under the banner of, you worship God and you, believe in the finality of the Prophet, our Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you love his family, that's good enough. I'm not concerned with what color your skin is, how big your beard is, what language you speak, what type of food is for iftar. I could care less about that. We're talking about values, right? So we're talking about values and people who pride themselves on that identity of being a Muslim, of being a believer. That's enough for me. I'm not going to start to segregate and discriminate against people who don't look like me, who don't eat the same food for iftar as I do. That stuff doesn't matter at the end of the day. It's not what we learn from Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Community are people who share and value together. Once you start discriminating and you start segregating, there's an opportunity to not really grasp on to the true meaning of prophetic community as we learn from the Holy Quran and as we learn from Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. And I'm not saying that communities and mosques and centers should not be ethnocentric. That's fine, If that serves the purpose and that serves the congregation, I'm all for it. It's wonderful. But at the same time, when someone needs your help, that obligation to bury that person who's deceased falls upon everyone. Not the one who goes to that particular mosque, or if that individual went to that mosque and then passed away. No, on the entire community at large. If someone can't, if someone can't, raise the finances or does not have the ability to feed themselves or break fast during the month of Ramadan because they don't have enough food, that responsibility and that accountability is going to fall to each and every one of us as believers. How come you are not there to go and support your believing sister or brother? And why were they eating, why did they not have food while you had food, for instance?
Right.
It's something to think about, and especially for folks like us, alhamdulillah, where we have certain privileges and we have certain opportunities. What are we doing, towards supporting, the isolated, the marginalized, the most vulnerable in our communities, right? That's what it's about. And I think that's, another really, really important sort of poignant point in regards to the emphasis on community within our religious tradition.
And I think you highlighted very clearly, just being a part of a community comes with a lot of responsibility, and we have to be cognizant of that, and make a conscious effort to be an active member. And that doesn't mean that you're, joining the mosque board and this, that, and the other. It's just taking care of people that are in that community with you.
No, just jump in and say, that responsibility that you speak about, it's not that burden. It's not that burdensome, right? If you hear someone passes away, send a message to the family members, right? You hear someone got married, send them a congratulations. Someone's sick, you haven't seen them in a long time, ask how they're doing. Keep them in your du'as. Doing really, really small things actually makes a much bigger difference than we can imagine. And again, this is what we learned from the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. It just really, really quickly reminds me of this sort of one instance when Imam Musa al-Kadhim, or seventh Imam alayhi salam, he had this companion who would come and see him very, very regularly, and for several days, 2-3 days, he didn't see him. Cut the story short, eventually goes to his home and he sees him, he visits him, he says, and he realized that he was very, very ill for the last 3 days. To which the Imam alayhi salam, he told this companion of his, he said, for 3 days I haven't seen you, and normally I see you every day. And the man says, Imam, I've been really, really ill, I'm sorry. He said, why didn't you tell me the first day? So he said, I didn't want to I didn't want to be a burden to you. You got a lot of things going on. And he says, no, this is my responsibility. I want to give. I want to serve. I want to be helpful to you. That's what we learn from our role models, our masters, our teachers, Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. To look out for those who need help and to come and be at the front and center. So before they ask, you're ready to serve.
Awesome. And that's an excellent segue into the environment that we're in today. I think a part of it, maybe a silver lining to all of this is that what I've noticed personally is that a lot of people are more connected now because you're kind of isolated, so there's no physical connection. But there's a lot of WhatsApp groups, there's a lot of community chats, and there's a lot of, hey, how's your family doing, and how can I help? Do you need groceries at home? Can you not? Are you able to survive in this? I think the community at large, especially from my perspective, what I've seen is doing a great job of staying connected and making sure that everybody's okay.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. People often tend to come together during times of crises. So the number of people engaging sort of in virtual programming, in light of everyone being at home, is far more than I could have anticipated. I thought that people, and this is probably something that I maybe need to work on. But I was under the assumption that no one's going to log into any of my programs because they got like a lot of Netflix shows to catch up on. And then I realized, oh man, it's pretty cool, alhamdulillah, that so many people are engaged and like are looking, to sort of cultivate that spirituality in this communal way. They need people, they need to socialize, they need to see others, and so on. So I think that it's sort of a really beautiful thing. But again, we never want to get complacent, right? So
Right.
while all of these steps are being made in the right direction, alhamdulillah, you're seeing the numbers, participation. I think it's a really powerful thing. People are, resorting back to faith and community more so than I've ever seen them, in my life or in my, years of doing this work. At the same time, we don't want to neglect again those most vulnerable populations, right? How about the woman who's in the home with her domestic abuser, right? How about the convert community? Many of them who may not have, for instance, Muslim family or even Muslim roommates, right?
Yep.
How do we get individuals who are in sort of remote parts of the country and are undergoing sort of financial hardship, and they don't have enough resources to connect online on the internet, or they don't know where to connect to the local WhatsApp group, right? But they also need help, and they also need someone to reach out to them and ask them how they're doing, because again, that means something. So we're taking steps in the right direction, and we're not going to be able to cover our basis like overnight, but at the very least being cognizant, sending a prayer, asking God to allow for us to be amongst those who are in the forefront of hopefully making a difference in someone else's life. That's like what life is about. That's like what
Yep.
our path towards seeking perfection is all about, right? And that's what we learn from our religion, and that's what we learn from our tradition, and we can't like neglect that. We're again, like I'll say it again, alhamdulillah, like we're very, very privileged in so many different ways. I have people who reach out to me every single day since the beginning of this pandemic, on my phone, text message, email. I can't even keep up, via social media platforms, telling me that they have a family member who's ill, or they don't have financial resources, and I'm in this part of the world, and my father is sick, and I have no other family, and no one can go and visit him. Every day, people are going through sort of so many a trial and tribulation and hardship. And when we can be a hope for them, when we can be a light in the midst of their darkness, that's what prophetic community is all about. So inshallah, Allah, continues to give us that opportunity.
In this environment, Ramadan is, we're going to be in the midst of Ramadan when this is released. What can we do or continue to do to maintain that spiritual level that we need to during Ramadan? And also, the other aspect of it is what you just mentioned: reach out to the people that need it the most.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, where we're able to like, utilize these WhatsApp groups and these sort of, other social media outlets to our advantage, and being at the forefront sort of in this grassroots initiative to helping and supporting and giving out of ourselves. لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. God says in the Quran that you will not attain, righteousness, you will not attain, the level of birr and this really high sort of spiritual station until you give out of that which you love the most. Loving the most is not only our wealth or our food, but sometimes it's our time, sometimes it's our effort, it's our diligence and our focus. And like doing the little things that can hopefully be, something that is a trickle down effect and making a difference for someone else. Then like we got to put forth that effort. And sort of on the community side of things during the month of Ramadan, I think again there's a lot of steps, already being made in the right direction. But keeping that up and continuously, asking folks, how are you doing? What can I do for you? Is there anything that you need? And when you don't hear from someone for several days, or when you hear someone sort of hesitating in their responses, maybe it's an extra opportunity for you to check in a little bit more, and maybe see really, do real check-ins that come from the heart, not just sort of out of common courtesy or cultural courtesy, but really we want to ask someone how they're doing. We really want to know how they're doing, and you want to emanate that from your heart. So when you talk, from a lens of sincerity, it's going to be that much more impactful for the one who's receiving it, inshallah.
Inshallah. And for Ramadan, one of my favorite parts of in previous years for Ramadan was actually, just as you said earlier, is seeing my friends and going to the masjid or going to the mosque and spending some time in congregational prayer and also just having a conversation and seeing people after a long day's fast.
Sure.
How can we kind of develop that in this current environment?
Alhamdulillah, we have a lot of access to phone and Zoom and social media outlets, and to keep up those relationships is really, really important. But I'm going to say something that's not going to be so popular right now. Please forgive me before I say this.
Sure.
As much as Ramadan is about community and is about spending time with others, this Ramadan, being that we don't have those same opportunities, we should spend a little bit more time in communication with God, right? So where people would normally hang out in restaurants and in cafes and so on and so forth, let's utilize that time to recite Quran. Let's utilize that time to pray. Let's utilize that time to make dua. Let's utilize that time, to seek forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to make up, missed prayers, to seek God's mercy and compassion, for all of our sins and our transgressions and our wrongdoings. Let's do things that are impactful. Let's, see how you can volunteer, either remotely, to speak to people, for instance, who have absolutely no one to speak to. What can we do, in terms of strategizing, programmatically what happens after all of this is over, right? How we write a book, I don't know. You do something that's impactful that leaves behind a legacy, right? Because we're not going to get this opportunity again. We're not, So we want to make sure that we're utilizing it to the best of our ability, so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala won't hold us to account and say you wasted 30 days during the month of Ramadan, reminiscing of what it was like when you used to hang out with your friends as you smoke shisha together. No, we don't want to do that. We want to dedicate ourselves to God, during the course of this month, inshallah.
So thank you for that. Thank you for putting me in my place as well.
No.
The other side of this is, and we've kind of thinking about this as well, amongst my friends, when mosques do open up, when this COVID thing subsides, there's an argument to be made that with the success of all the virtual programs, with the success of the halakas that you've been doing virtually, I've spoken to Sheikh Rasul Nagabi, and he said the same thing. His Thursday night programs, his darses that they've been doing really well virtually. How do we fill the mosques back up?
Yeah, that's going to be a problem, and I think that people have to realize that face-to-face and in-person interaction is so much more impactful. Look, it's much easier for me to sit right over here in my bedroom, and for me to deliver my presentation. I'm not commuting, I'm not traveling, I'm not doing any of this. It doesn't matter to me. But there's something sort of very personable about being with people. The impact and the compassion that you feel from someone's body language can be understood by camera, but it's not really understood, to the same level and to the same extent, right? So when you go back, you talk about congregational prayers, they're not being performed, via, live stream. You have to do it physically, standing next to one another. When you go to the Holy Kaaba and you perform tawaf around the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have to go and you have to physically do it, and you have to stand and you have to walk and you have to move and you have to get pushed and shoved by other people. That's there's something beautiful about it. Yes, we can deliver iftars, alhamdulillah. We've been blessed with the blessings of Uber Eats and Seamless and all these other sort of really nice sort of, food, services. And you could break someone else's fast and get the reward by sending them a meal over. If you want my address, Zohair, I'll text it to you afterwards, inshallah.
Inshallah.
But, it's different than when you take a cup of water and you give it to someone and you say, I know you had a long fast. You know, it's the time of iftar. Why don't you drink this cup of water, right? Yes, you can do that to your families, but again, there's people who don't have family, and again, like in addition to family, you want to extend that. So community is really, really important. Being around people is important. It's significant. It helps our spiritual development. It improves our etiquette. You know, as long as we're surrounded by the right people. And inshallah, it might take a little bit of time because we don't know how long that this thing is going to drag on for. But we ask Allah Subhanahu wa Taala to make it easy for us. And then hopefully we'll have to come up with the strategy to hopefully bring in folks to the program, which I don't think is going to be a problem. I think people are dying to get out of their homes.
I think you're right about that. I think it's not going to be an issue, but I think there would be my thinking is that there's going to be a change of strategy as well, right?
Oh,
There's get there is this platform now available, and the success is right in front of you. So maybe there might be a kind of a side by side thing. You have events that are happening in person. There are events that are happening online.
yeah, and I think the benefit is that utilizing the technology when things can't be done sort of face to face, people are that much more proficient in utilizing it, right?
Yep.
And so like that can be very, very advantageous, especially in a setting like my own, where I work in a university. I know now very, very easily, how to run, a lot of like these, webinars that allow for me to teach, that allow for me to engage others in ways that are hopefully meaningful, and you can reach an audience that normally you would not reach, and we can create levels and systems of access, to my students, to my teachers, so on and so forth, and that's something very, very beneficial to us. But at the end of the day, there is a lot of barakah, a lot of blessing. We have ahadith that tell us, I don't want to get into them right now, about the importance of, for instance, this idea of physical space.
One of the questions that I had in mind for when, as we are talking about mosques opening up eventually, is that what I've noticed and what I've witnessed is mosques in general that I've visited personally are kind of, insular, and they're silos almost. And even the people that are in those communities are not always that welcoming per se, in my experience, to people that are from the outside. Even when I came here, I was 12 years old from I came here from Pakistan, and I didn't make a lot of friends. Eventually, in my late teenage years, in my 20s, is when I started having a lot of friends that had the same values and beliefs as me. And I feel like not from my parents, that might have pushed me in the wrong direction, right? And that importance of community kind of is emphasized in that whole experience. How do we make sure that our mosques are more inclusive?
If you don't see it sort of on, let me take one step back. If you don't see that effort to reach out and to create sort of inclusion and diversity within your center, then you initiate it. You bring sort of that talent and that effort to the community. You don't see anyone else welcoming people who are new, then you go, right? You can't always rely on others to do the things that you feel are impactful. Sometimes you need to go and do them on your own. That's not easy. That's challenging. It's very easy for us to divert responsibility or feel like that's not our place. But in a community, that's ultimate objective is hopefully to bring its congregants closer toward God, and the teachings of the Quran and the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. That sometimes we need to be the ones to take that initiative. So you be that welcome committee. That introduces people. You look for people who might need extra help, who might need extra support, who can't get to the mosque because they don't have a car. You go pick them up, right? Or you create that, sort of, again, on a grassroots level, we have an opportunity to make impact in people's lives. But the first step is to really know kind of what people need. So when we ourselves are making that effort and are being very, very conscious, inshallah, we're going to find a lot of, sort of roadways to making a difference.
The other side of it is that the other side of the question is, converts that are going to a mosque for the first time, or they may have only visited a mosque 2 or 3 times, and they still haven't really made any friends. What can they do?
No, I know, I hear you 100%, and I think that again, it's probably not their responsibility. They're new, right? someone who's new to the community, not only a convert, but someone, for instance, who just moved, right, to this town, to this city, whatever. Why does someone who's virtually coming in with a deficiency, right, meaning someone who's new, doesn't have like the social network, the family, whatever it is, why is the onus on them, to find their place? It's not. It shouldn't be, right? It should be the larger community. It should be religious leadership, right? It should be community leadership, who are at the forefront of doing that, at the forefront of reaching out, at the forefront, of welcoming others, right? That's what builds this. That what we learn from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what we learn from Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, that they would go out of their way and they would make themselves accessible to anyone and everyone who was new, anyone and everyone who needed help and needed support, right? Where's that gone? Right? I feel like we've lost that. We've lost that nature and that beauty that's founded within our tradition, and inshallah we're able to grow that,
Just to close out this conversation, what is that one aspect, or that one actionable item that our audience can kind of take away from this? What is that one thing that you would recommend that each individual does that's listening to this right now to be a more active member of community?
Yeah, just remember that building community, being part of community, is something that allows for your own spiritual growth. So sometimes you're doing it for someone else. At the end of the day, that's going to impact you as well. Because at the end of the day, we like the bottom line, right? We like numbers. We like things that are going to benefit us, right? And then when there's more sort of tangible reason for me to do good for someone else, unfortunately, we're sort of it's very easy for us to digest that, which is why we like hadiths that tell us, for instance, if you pray this prayer, you get this reward. If you do this, you get this much reward. If you do this, you get this, right? If you do this, you're going to make this much money, right? Virtually in the same regard. Know that when you're serving someone else, it's going to come back and serve you one day, right? And that's what community is about. That's what walking in the footsteps of the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam is all about. And we can still do that these days. You can still reach out. You can still make a difference in someone else's life. But again, it starts with kind of where we are in our own hearts. Hopefully we're able to emanate those qualities.
Amazing. Again, I appreciate it so much for joining us today. You can find Sheikh Faiyaz at online at Facebook.
Faiyaz Jaffer.
At Faiyaz Jaffer on Twitter, on Instagram, Facebook. I think I already mentioned that. And your podcast is found
Sheikhing It Up with Sheikh Faiyaz, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, every night, 10, 15-minute reflections on the month of Ramadan. If you're not already tired of hearing my voice, try to check it out, inshallah.
I don't think anybody's tired yet. And your halaqas on when
They vary, but during Ramadan, it'll be Thursdays and Fridays.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sheikh Faiyaz. I appreciate it again.
Thank you so much.
Hasan Hussain dae Hasan Hussain dae Sade sir te ghazi dae alam Hai dariyam